The swirling void of space rippled as the Kazarith, a sleek, predatory starship, emerged from hyperspace. Its hull glistened like blackened steel, absorbing the starlight rather than reflecting it. Inside, the crew of galactic hunters famed and feared across the galaxy were already preparing for their latest quarry. This wasn't just another contract, it was the apex of their careers. In the dimly lit bridge, Captain Varric stood tall, his cerulean scales shimmering like wet gemstones under the pale artificial light. His elongated head tilted in thought as he reviewed the intelligence dossier. Despite his outward calm, his tail flicked sharply, betraying his inner tension. "Explain this," he said, his gravelly voice echoing in the silence. He tapped the hologram, enlarging an image of a stocky biped human. The creature's flat, pale face looked deceptively non-threatening. "Is this truly the infamous species that earned a level 10 danger classification?" "Yes," Captain answered Ralex, the ship's intelligence officer. Her spindly fingers tapped rapidly on her console, pulling up more data. Her 3 eyes blinked in succession as she gestured to the glowing display. "This one resides on a backwater planet. Primitive, minimal technology. The human is. Alone." Ralex paused, her spider-like features betraying a hint of unease. The records show their species as unpredictable, resourceful, dangerous. Varric's mandibles clicked together thoughtfully. "This specimen hardly looks dangerous." Torvox, the ship's muscle, let out a deep, resonant chuckle. The massive, 4-armed brute leaned against a bulkhead, his crimson skin gleaming with faint scars from countless hunts. "Dangerous? That thing looks like it couldn't take down a wounded Zarnak cub." "Perhaps," Varric said slowly, "but humans have a reputation. Fearsome adaptability, relentless curiosity, an uncanny knack for survival, even in the most inhospitable conditions. We've all read the dossiers. Entire ecosystems destabilized when humans were introduced, dead planets crawling back to life when one of them got stranded there." He tapped a claw against his jaw and thought. "This one seems vulnerable, perhaps too vulnerable, but if the data is accurate, we cannot afford to underestimate it." The Kazarith was outfitted with the finest tools of the trade: tranquilizer drones, magnetic containment fields, and an array of bioweaponry capable of subduing the galaxy's most savage beasts. A single human on a primitive world should pose no threat. Still, Varric's instincts told him to be cautious. "Prepare the landing team," he ordered. "This prize is not to be taken lightly." Kevin Muldoon stood in his backyard, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "World's Okayest Dad." He wasn't a dad, he wasn't even married, but his sister had given him the mug after he managed to kill her cactus during a visit. "You'd be an okay parent," she joked. "Just don't adopt a plant." It was a quiet morning in his rural home. Birds chirped, and a soft breeze rustled the trees. His trusty Jack Russell Terrier, Rufus, was in the zone, digging a hole near the garden fence like he was on a mission. "Rufus, leave the mole alone," Kevin called lazily, leaning against a tree stump. The little dog froze, his ears twitching, then resumed his enthusiastic excavation with renewed vigor. Dirt flew everywhere. Kevin sighed, crouching to inspect the damage. "You're impossible, you know that," he said, rubbing the dog's head affectionately. Rufus barked and wagged his tail furiously, clearly proud of his handiwork. Their quiet moment was shattered by a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the air. Kevin frowned and looked up. A dark shape descended through the sky, shimmering like heat waves on asphalt. It settled beyond the hill at the edge of his property, kicking up dust and startling a flock of crows. Rufus growled low, his hackles rising as he fixed his gaze on the disturbance. "What the heck is that?" Kevin muttered. He grabbed his phone, debating whether to call someone. But who? His nearest neighbor was miles away, and the authorities would laugh him off. Probably some rich guy's drone, he reasoned aloud, though he wasn't convinced. He decided to investigate. "Rufus, stay here," Kevin ordered. The dog ignored him completely, bounding ahead toward the hill with an energy that only a Jack Russell could muster. "Rufus, get back here," Kevin shouted, breaking into a jog. He topped the hill just in time to see a group of shimmering figures emerge from the object. They weren't human. The landing team consisted of 3 hunters, Captain Varric, Ralax, and Torvox. Clad in adaptive camouflage suits, they moved like wraiths across the terrain, their outlines flickering and blending seamlessly with the environment. The terrain scanner confirms the human's location, Ralax whispered, her voice tense. We're closing in. As they approached, her scanner pinged softly. Wait, Captain, there's a secondary life form. Small, terrestrial, canine species. Varric frowned. A pet. Likely, Ralax said. Should we neutralize it? Unnecessary, Varric said dismissively. Focus on the human. They crept closer, their suits rendering them nearly invisible. The human was in the open, gazing in their direction as if sensing something amiss. Impossible, Varric thought. The stealth field was flawless. Then a small, white and brown creature darted into view. The dog's sharp eyes locked onto the hunter's position with unsettling accuracy. It barked a sharp, piercing sound that made Ralax flinch. What is it doing? Torvox rumbled, shifting uneasily. Announcing its presence, Ralax said. Or perhaps issuing a warning. Neutralize it, Varric ordered, his patience thinning. Ralax deployed a tranquilizer drone, a sleek, beetle-like device that zipped silently toward the dog. The canine reacted with terrifying speed. It lunged, jaws snapping shut around the drone. A faint crunching sound followed as it destroyed the device with unnerving efficiency. Did it just? Torvox began, his shoulders tensing. Yes, Ralax said, her voice unsteady. It destroyed a Class 4 tranquilizer drone. It's just a small creature, Varric growled, though his confidence wavered. Advance. The dog had other plans. With a fierce growl, it charged. Kevin stood frozen atop the hill, staring at the scene unfolding below. His brain struggled to process what he was seeing. 3 humanoid figures shimmered into visibility, their forms sleek and alien. Their postures were tense, and one of them carried a glowing device that looked suspiciously like a weapon. Rufus, oblivious to the concept of fear or intergalactic diplomacy, was charging straight toward them, barking with the ferocity of a dog 10 times his size. Rufus, Kevin yelled, breaking into a sprint. Get back here. The dog didn't so much as glance back. The aliens, clearly unprepared for such a direct assault, froze in confusion. One raised its glowing device, but the terrier was faster. Rufus lunged at the nearest figure, his teeth latching onto what Kevin could only assume was an armored leg. The alien let out a sharp, high-pitched screech, stumbling backward as Rufus shook his head furiously, growling all the while. The other 2 figures scrambled, their camouflage flickering, as they tried to reposition. Kevin skidded to a stop, breathless and wide-eyed. Rufus, he called hesitantly. Maybe don't kill the alien. Rufus, however, was fully committed to the takedown. He let go of the leg just long enough to reposition, leaping onto the alien's back and going straight for its shimmering helmet. The alien flailed, its screeches now bordering on outright panic. One of the other figures stepped forward, raising its weapon again. Kevin didn't know what it was planning to do, but he wasn't about to let them zap his dog. Hey, Kevin shouted, grabbing a stick from the ground. Leave him alone. The figure hesitated, glancing between Kevin and the chaos unfolding with its comrade. Kevin, emboldened by their reaction, waved the stick menacingly. Yeah, that's right, he yelled. You better back off, or you're next. To his utter astonishment, the aliens retreated a few steps, their glowing eyes fixated on Rufus. The dog had managed to wrestle the first alien to the ground and was now barking triumphantly, his tail wagging like mad. The downed alien let out a series of rapid clicks and whistles, which Kevin could only assume were pleas for help. The other 2 exchanged what looked like nervous glances before finally stepping in. Kevin braced himself, but instead of attacking, they began to pull their comrade away. Rufus growled, his teeth bared, and the aliens froze. One of them emitted a warbling sound almost like a plea. Rufus, Kevin said cautiously, inching forward. Come here, boy, let's not traumatize the aliens too much, okay? The terrier hesitated, glancing between the retreating figures and his owner. Finally, he gave a decisive bark and trotted back to Kevin's side, his chest puffed out like a victorious gladiator. Kevin crouched down and grabbed Rufus' collar, holding him steady as the aliens gathered their wounded companion. The shimmering camouflage flickered back on, and moments later they were gone, leaving only faint disturbances in the grass where their footprints had been. Kevin let out a long breath, collapsing onto the ground. "What in the world just happened?" he muttered. Rufus barked, wagging his tail proudly. Kevin rubbed his temples. "I don't know if I should be proud of you or terrified." On the Kazarith, the atmosphere was tense. Captain Varric paced the bridge, his claws clicking rhythmically against the metal floor. "What happened?" he demanded, his voice cold and sharp. Ralex fidgeted at her station, her spider-like eyes darting nervously. "The canine interfered with the mission, Captain. It is more formidable than anticipated." "More formidable," Varric hissed. "It's a terrestrial mammal. How does something so insignificant overpower a Class 3 combat operative?" Torvox crossed his four massive arms, his expression unreadable. "It's not natural," he rumbled. "That thing has the instincts of a predator and the fury of a Draknar broodmother." Ralex nodded reluctantly. "Its reflexes and aggression are exceptional. It destroyed the tranquilizer drone effortlessly and exhibited no fear response to superior technology." Varric's mandibles clicked together in frustration. "And the human?" "The human defended it," Ralex said hesitantly. "He used primitive tactics, but his actions were effective in aiding the canine's attack." For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Varric's tail lashed behind him as he processed the report. "The mission isn't over," he said finally. "Deploy a containment unit. Neutralize the canine if necessary, but bring me the human." "Understood," Captain Ralex said, though her tone carried a hint of doubt. Torvox cracked his knuckles. "If that thing comes at me again, I'm ripping it in half." Varric shot him a sharp glance. "Do not underestimate it, Torvox. The beast may be small, but it has already bested our technology. Underestimating humans or their pets has proven fatal before." Torvox grunted but said nothing. Kevin spent the rest of the day warily watching the skies. Every strange noise made him jump, and Rufus, sensing his unease, stayed close by. By evening, Kevin decided he'd had enough. He pushed his couch against the front door and reinforced the windows with chairs. Rufus watched curiously, his tail wagging, as if this were all some kind of game. "You think this is funny, don't you?" Kevin muttered, dragging the kitchen table toward the back door. "Well, you won't think it's so funny when they show up with something bigger than a flashlight and a fancy suit." Rufus barked, running in excited circles around the room. Kevin sighed. "You're lucky you're cute." By the time the barricades were done, the sun had set, and Kevin was exhausted. He sank into a recliner, his nerves still on edge. Rufus hopped into his lap, curling up contentedly. "You're a good boy," Rufus, Kevin murmured, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Even if you are a little terror." For a brief moment, he let himself relax. Surely the aliens had learned their lesson. Surely they wouldn't be stupid enough to try again. But deep down, he knew better. The low, ominous hum that filled the night confirmed it. The low hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls of Kevin's house. Rufus stirred on his lap, his ears perking up as he let out a low growl. Kevin groaned, his head falling back against the recliner. "I knew it," he muttered. "Couldn't even give me one peaceful night, could they?" The hum crescendoed into a deep thrum, and a blinding green light lit up the windows. Rufus barked furiously, leaping down and bolting to the door. Kevin followed, grabbing the broom he'd stationed by the recliner. It wasn't much, but after watching Rufus dismantle advanced alien tech with nothing but his teeth, Kevin figured improvisation was key. "All right, buddy," he said, cracking the door open. "Let's see what they're bringing this time." Outside, a new alien craft hovered just beyond the hill, its sleek, triangular design glowing faintly as it touched down. The ship hissed and released a metallic pod from its belly, which rolled smoothly onto the grass. Kevin tensed as the pod opened, revealing a group of smaller, quadrupedal machines that scuttled out like a swarm of oversized crabs. "Great," Kevin muttered, stepping onto the porch. "They brought friends." Rufus darted forward, barking furiously at the mechanical swarm. The machines paused, their glowing sensors swiveling toward him as if assessing the threat. Then, as if reaching a consensus, they began to close in. "Not on my watch," Kevin yelled, charging forward with the broom. Rufus struck first, launching himself at the nearest machine and clamping down on one of its legs. The machine emitted a harsh screech as Rufus yanked with surprising force, sending sparks flying. It toppled to the ground, and Rufus wasted no time pouncing on the next. Kevin swung his broom at another machine, knocking it off course as it tried to flank Rufus. The metallic crab skittered away, but Kevin followed, jabbing at it with the broom handle. "Think you're so smart," Kevin taunted. "Well, how about?" Before he could finish, a bright blue net shot out from one of the machines, wrapping around Kevin's legs and pulling him to the ground. He groaned as the wind was knocked out of him. "Rufus," Kevin yelled, struggling against the net. "Little help." The dog turned, his ears flicking at the sound of Kevin's voice. With a ferocious bark, Rufus abandoned his current target and sprinted toward Kevin. The machine holding the net fired a second shot, but Rufus dodged with ease, zigzagging as he closed the distance. Leaping onto the machine, Rufus clamped his jaws onto the net launcher, tearing it free in a shower of sparks. Kevin felt the tension around his legs release and quickly scrambled to his feet, grabbing the discarded broom. "Good boy," he shouted, swiping at another crab machine that had crept too close. The remaining machines began to back off, their glowing sensors flickering erratically. Kevin and Rufus stood side by side, breathing heavily as the swarm regrouped near the pod. "Yeah, that's right," Kevin shouted, shaking the broom at them. "Go on, get out of here." But instead of retreating, the pod itself began to transform. Panels shifted and unfolded, revealing a towering bipedal machine armed with glowing weapons. Kevin stared in disbelief as the machine stepped forward, its metallic voice booming. "Hostile canine. Stand down." Rufus growled, his tail stiff as a board. Kevin tightened his grip on the broom. "Not gonna happen," he muttered. The machine raised one of its weapons, a pulsating cannon aimed directly at Rufus. Kevin's heart raced. "Rufus, don't." But Rufus was already in motion. The terrier darted forward, weaving between the machine's legs as it fired a glowing bolt of energy. The blast missed by a wide margin, scorching a patch of grass instead. Rufus leapt onto the machine's foot and began climbing, his small size allowing him to evade its attempts to shake him off. Kevin watched in a mix of awe and terror as Rufus reached the machine's torso, clamping onto a joint with his teeth. Sparks flew and the machine stumbled, its movements jerky and uncoordinated. Warning system failure, the machine boomed, its voice distorted. Rufus released his grip and jumped clear as the machine collapsed to the ground in a heap of smoking metal. Kevin ran to Rufus, scooping him up and holding him tight. "You are insane, you know that," he said, laughing despite himself. Rufus licked his face, his tail wagging furiously. The alien craft, now missing its assault pod, rose into the air with a loud whine. Kevin glared up at it, shaking his fist. "Go ahead, fly away," he shouted. "And don't come back." The ship hesitated for a moment, then disappeared into the sky with a crackling burst of light. Kevin let out a long sigh, setting Rufus down and collapsing onto the grass. "That's it," he said. "I'm building a bunker." Rufus barked, clearly ready for whatever came next. Kevin sat on the grass, still clutching the broom as he stared at the smoking remains of the alien pod and its mechanical minions. Rufus wagged his tail, circling the wreckage like a proud conqueror surveying his latest victory. "I'm starting to think you enjoy this," Rufus, Kevin muttered. The dog barked enthusiastically, his tongue lolling out in a clear of course I do expression. The silence that followed was brief. A deep, resonant voice boomed across the sky, shaking the ground beneath them. "Human Kevin and Protector Rufus," it said, cold and commanding. Kevin froze. Oh no, why is it always me? The source of the voice came into view as another ship descended larger than the previous ones, its surface gleaming like molten silver. Unlike the sleek, aggressive design of the Kazarith, this vessel had an air of deliberate intimidation. Its shape was angular and imposing, its engines humming with an otherworldly energy that made Kevin's teeth buzz. I swear, Kevin muttered under his breath, if this one turns into a giant crab too, I'm moving to Antarctica. A platform extended from the ship's underside, and descending on it was a single figure. The alien was massive, easily twice the height of Kevin, its body adorned with intricate armor that pulsed faintly with shifting patterns of light. Its face was hidden behind a smooth, mirrored visor, and when it stepped onto the ground, the air seemed to ripple around it. Rufus growled low, his ears flattening against his head. Kevin instinctively placed a hand on the dog's back. The alien raised a hand, and Kevin tensed, half expecting another weapon to emerge. Instead, a calm but authoritative voice emanated from the being. I am Overseer Caltrax of the Galactic Accord, it said. I come not to attack but to negotiate. Kevin blinked. Negotiate? Yes, Caltrax said, nodding. The actions of your Protectorate gestured to Rufus have caused widespread alarm among our ranks. The destruction of the Kazarith and the annihilation of the Dreadnought have reached the ears of the Galactic Council. Kevin glanced down at Rufus, who was now sniffing at a piece of alien wreckage with mild disinterest. Okay, first of all, he's not the problem. You guys keep showing up, waving your weird guns and crab bots around. Caltrax seemed to consider this. It is true that the hunters underestimated the Protectors' capabilities, and their methods were unrefined. Unrefined, Kevin said, incredulous. They sent drones and nets after my dog. What did they think was going to happen? Caltrax tilted its head slightly. That is precisely why I am here, human Kevin. The Galactic Council recognizes that further hostilities with Earth would be unwise. Kevin snorted. Unwise? You think? Look, why don't you all just leave us alone? Rufus and I aren't looking to start an intergalactic war, okay? The Overseer's visor glinted as it stepped closer. That is precisely our intent. We propose a treaty. A treaty, Kevin repeated. With me. Technically, Caltrax said, with the Protector. You will act as his envoy. Kevin stared at the alien for a moment, then burst out laughing. You want to negotiate? With my dog. Rufus, as if understanding, barked sharply. Caltrax didn't flinch. Indeed, the Protector's actions have demonstrated that Earth possesses defensive capabilities far beyond what we anticipated. A formal agreement will ensure that no further factions attempt to breach your territory. Kevin rubbed his temples. Okay, so what's the deal? You guys stay out of our hair and we. What? Don't let Rufus eat your spaceships. Precisely, Caltrax said. In return, Earth will be recognized as a neutral zone within the Galactic Accord. No incursions. No interference. The Protector's reputation will ensure compliance from even the most reckless factions. Kevin considered this. It sounded almost too good to be true, but at the same time he was exhausted. If agreeing to some alien treaty meant no more late-night invasions, it was worth a shot. Fine, he said, crossing his arms. But if anyone breaks this treaty, Rufus is coming for you first. Caltrax inclined its head. Understood. With a wave of its hand, the Overseer produced a glowing sphere that floated between them. Symbols and glyphs danced across its surface, and Caltrax extended a finger to touch it. Place your hand on the sphere, it instructed. Kevin hesitated, then reached out. The moment his palm touched the sphere, a warm sensation spread through his arm, and the glyphs pulsed brightly. Rufus barked, leaping up to place his paws on the sphere as well. It is done, Caltrax said. The sphere vanished, and the alien stepped back. The treaty is sealed. Earth will be protected under the watch of the Protector. Kevin let out a long breath. Finally. Maybe now I can sleep without worrying about alien death robots. Caltrax nodded. Farewell, human Kevin. May the Protector continue to guard your world with his unparalleled ferocity. The overseer returned to the ship, and moments later, the massive vessel ascended into the sky, vanishing into the cosmos. Kevin looked down at Rufus, who was now chewing on a piece of alien metal like it was a bone. "You know," Kevin said, "you just became the most famous dog in the galaxy." Rufus wagged his tail, clearly unfazed by his newfound status. Kevin sighed, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Come on, buddy, let's go home. I think we've earned a break." As they walked back toward the house, the quiet of the evening settled in once